A lone jeep rolls across Libyan sand in darkness. July 1942. No headlights, no backup. Just 3 men surrounded by enough ammunition and fuel to vaporize themselves if a single tracer finds the wrong jerry can. 5 machine guns point in every direction like the spines of some mechanical hedgehog. The springs have collapsed under nearly double the rated load. The entire vehicle is one stray bullet away from becoming a fireball visible for miles. But here's what makes this moment stranger. That overloaded, spring-crushed mechanical absurdity is about to achieve something the entire Royal Air Force couldn't manage with squadrons of heavy bombers. In the next 15 minutes, this single vehicle and 17 others, exactly like it, will destroy more Luftwaffe aircraft than most RAF bombing raids accomplished in a month. And they'll do it for almost no cost, with almost no casualties. Using a weapon system that shouldn't exist according to every military manual written up to that point. This is the story of how Britain turned a borrowed American car into the most cost-effective weapon of the North African campaign. How 5 scavenged aircraft guns bolted to a frame designed to carry groceries became the weapon that forced Rommel to pull entire companies away from his front line just to guard empty airfields. And how 4 men in a vehicle worth less than a single Messerschmitt managed to impose a defensive burden on Germany that no conventional British unit could match. The problem Britain couldn't bomb away. By mid-1942, the Royal Air Force was hemorrhaging resources in North Africa at a rate that made victory mathematically questionable. German Junkers 87 Stuka dive bombers hit British supply columns at will. Messerschmitt 19 swept RAF fighters from contested airspace. For every German aircraft the RAF destroyed in aerial combat, Britain lost pilots it had spent months training, fuel that had shipped halfway around the world, and machines it couldn't easily replace. The obvious counter was bombing enemy airfields. Destroy the aircraft on the ground before they could take off. There was just one problem: it didn't work. High-altitude raids against dispersed desert airstrips were phenomenally expensive and staggeringly inaccurate. Aircraft parked on desert sand weren't clustered in neat rows. They spread across miles of open ground, separated by hundreds of meters, camouflaged against beige sand with beige netting. A bomber flying at 10,000 feet trying to hit individual aircraft faced odds that would make a casino blush. The cost per aircraft destroyed ratio was bankrupting Britain's North African air campaign. Every bombing raid consumed resources that could have been used elsewhere while producing results that barely justified the fuel burned getting there. Then a Scottish Guards officer recovering from a botched parachute training accident proposed something that sounded insane. The man who proposed walking into enemy airfields, Lieutenant David Stirling, wasn't supposed to be anywhere near operational planning in July 1941. He was supposed to be in a hospital bed recovering from injuries sustained when his parachute malfunctioned. Instead, he was writing a proposal that would get him either court-martialed or promoted. Small teams of highly trained men, Stirling argued, could be inserted behind enemy lines, walk onto poorly guarded desert airfields at night, and destroy aircraft on the ground using hand-placed explosives. No bombers needed, no fighter escorts, just men, darkness, and the assumption that the Germans wouldn't expect anyone crazy enough to try it. Stirling secured approval from General Kurt Auchinleck to form L Detachment Special Air Service Brigade. The name was deliberately misleading, designed to make Axis intelligence believe a full British parachute brigade existed in Egypt. Stirling assembled roughly 65 men at Kabrit, 100 miles south of Cairo, drawn primarily from the recently disbanded Lay Force Commandos. The first test of this concept was an unmitigated disaster. When everything goes wrong on the night of November 16, 1941, 55 men parachuted toward German and Italian airfields at Gazala and Tamimi. The plan was textbook special operations: land under cover of darkness, infiltrate the airfields, place explosive charges, withdraw before dawn. What happened instead was one of the worst sandstorms in 30 years striking during the drop. Equipment containers blew away. Demolition charges were soaked. Men scattered across miles of featureless desert. Of 55 men who jumped, only 21 walked back. 0 aircraft destroyed. The SAS had lost over 60% of its strength and accomplished precisely nothing. Under normal circumstances, this would have ended the entire program, but what happened next changed everything. The truck that changed everything. The survivors were collected by the Long Range Desert Group, a specialist reconnaissance unit operating deep behind enemy lines in modified Chevrolet trucks. Captain David Lloyd Owen made an offer that seemed obvious in hindsight but revolutionary at the time: deliver SAS teams to their targets by vehicle instead of parachute. Sterling accepted. Within 1 month, foot infiltration raids delivered by LRTG transport achieved results that justified the entire program. On December 14, 1941, Lieutenant Paddy Mayne led 6 men against Timmy Airfield. They carried a new weapon designed by Lieutenant Jock Lewes called the Lewes Bomb, 1 pound of Nobel 888 plastic explosive combined with a 1/4 pound of thermite and diesel oil, detonated by a time pencil fuse. Weighing roughly 1 pound each, a single man could carry enough to destroy a dozen aircraft. The thermite ignited aviation fuel on contact, turning each charge into both blast and incendiary weapon. Mayne's team placed their charges and walked away. 24 planes destroyed, 0 SAS casualties. The method proved devastatingly repeatable. Mayne returned to Tamimi on December 27th and destroyed 27 more aircraft. Lieutenant Bill Fraser's team hit Ajdabiya Airfield and claimed 37, though Italian records confirmed the actual figure was closer to 18 to 25. By June 1942, Sterling had personally led a raid on Benina Airfield, destroying 37 more. But then the Germans adapted, and adaptation killed the advantage. When stealth stopped working, by mid-1942, sentries had been posted on individual aircraft. Silent infiltration raids became exponentially more dangerous. Guards, floodlights, and machine gun emplacements now ring desert airstrips that had previously relied on their isolation for protection. Every aircraft now had a man standing next to it with a rifle. The SAS Ace needed something that could substitute speed and overwhelming firepower for stealth. A weapon system that could destroy aircraft in minutes rather than hours, from the relative safety of a moving vehicle, would transform the equation entirely. The armed Jeep was that weapon. The gun that should have been scrap. Beginning in July 1942, the SAS acquired its own fleet of Willys MB Jeeps. The base vehicle was straightforward, a 4-cylinder flathead engine producing 60 horsepower, 4-wheel drive. Top speed of 65 miles per hour on roads and around 45 across open desert. Standard dry weight was 2,337 pounds. What the SAS did to it violated every engineering principle the designers had intended. The defining modification was the Vickers K machine gun. This weapon fired .303 British ammunition at 950 to 1,200 rounds per minute, 3 times faster than the standard Bren gun. It fed from flat 100-round drum magazines, meaning a brief burst could pump dozens of incendiary and tracer rounds into a parked aircraft before the gunner needed to swap drums. According to SAS veterans, Sterling selected the Vickers K specifically because it had been designed as an aircraft defensive weapon. His reasoning was elegantly simple. A gun built to destroy airplanes in the air would work just as well against airplanes on the ground. The SAS sourced these guns from scrapped RAF aircraft. The Vickers K had armed bombers like the Fairey Battle and Bristol Blenheim, but was being phased out in favor of belt-fed Brownings. Obsolete airframes in Egyptian scrapyards yielded weapons officially unaccounted for in quartermaster records. A typical armed Jeep mounted 3 to 5 of these guns. Twin Vickers Ks sat on a swivel pedestal beside the front passenger. Another pair covered the rear arc. Sometimes a single gun was fixed near the driver's position. Some vehicles also carried a .5 caliber Browning for armored targets. Desert survival modifications were equally critical. Windscreens were removed to eliminate sun glare that could betray position from miles away. Radiator grills were cut open to improve cooling in temperatures exceeding 45 degrees Celsius. 8 to 12 additional jerry cans extended range from 200 miles to over 400. Water condensers captured radiator boil-off and fed it back into the cooling system. A backnulled sun compass provided continuous true bearing while driving, unaffected by magnetic interference near vehicle engines. Fully loaded with guns, fuel, water, ammunition, rations, sand channels, and camouflage nets, a single SAS Ace Raider Jeep weighed between 3,800 and 4,200 pounds. The springs were compressed flat. The chassis groaned under nearly double its rated weight. But it worked. The night that proved everything. July 26, 1942. Sidi Harnish Airfield. 18 armed jeeps carrying roughly 60 SAS men, navigated by Mike Sadler, crossed 50 miles of open desert at night without headlights, using celestial observation and sun compass bearings. They arrived exactly on target. As the column approached the airfield perimeter, German runway lights activated for a landing, Luftwaffe bomber unintentionally illuminating every parked aircraft like stage lights. Sterling fired a green signal flare. The jeeps entered in a V formation, right column engaging targets on the right, left column, raking everything on the left. According to the SAS war diary, the entire assault lasted roughly 15 minutes. 37 aircraft were destroyed, including Junkers 87 Stukas, Junkers 52 transports, and Messerschmitt 109 fighters. The SAS lost one man during the raid. Lance Bombardier John Robson, aged 21, killed at his machine gun. A second man, French SAS volunteer André Zernheld, was killed by Stuka attack during withdrawal the following day. 15 of 18 jeeps returned safely. A single 15-minute pass by 18 jeeps achieved a result comparable to a full RAF bombing operation without losing a single aircraft, consuming a fraction of the fuel, at the cost of one man killed in action during the raid itself. Other raids delivered similar results. At Bagush in early July 1942, the first ever drive-in jeep raid claimed aircraft losses in the mid-30s. At El Deba, Maine's convoy claimed 14 aircraft destroyed against significantly upgraded German security. The numbers, nobody fully agrees on the total number of Axis aircraft destroyed by the SAS, remains genuinely disputed. Damian Lewis, writing for the Imperial War Museum, cites 387 proven with a probable total of 450. Alan Vick's Rand Corporation analysis attributes 367 to all British Special Forces combined. At AA Tobiah, overclaiming margins reached 30 to 50%. A careful estimate suggests 250 to 370 aircraft destroyed by all British Special Forces in North Africa, with SAS operations accounting for the clear majority. Paddy Mayne reportedly accounted for between 100 and 130 aircraft. Across the campaign, more planes destroyed on the ground than many RAF fighter aces shot down in the air. What matters more than the exact figure is what no other nation achieved: the weapon. Nobody else built. Germany's Brandenburger Division used standard Kübelwagen light utility cars and Opel Blitz trucks purely for transportation. They specialized in deception and infiltration, seizing bridges and enemy uniforms, not vehicle-based direct assault. The concept of mounting concentrated automatic firepower onto a light car and driving it through an enemy airfield simply did not exist in German, American, or Soviet doctrine during the war. No other nation developed anything comparable until years after observing British results. The strategic mathematics that won the real war. What is documented in German field intelligence reports from 1942 is the increasing diversion of resources to airfield defense, including anti-vehicle obstacles and mobile patrols specifically tasked with hunting SAS raiders. Every guard posted on every aircraft, every searchlight installed, every machine gun emplacement dug around a desert airstrip represented resources pulled directly away from the front line. By late 1942, the Axis was reportedly dedicating entire infantry companies to static airfield defense in rear areas where, before the SAS, a single watchman had sufficed. This defensive multiplication effect meant the strategic impact of the armed jeep extended far beyond the aircraft it physically destroyed. It forced Rommel to weaken his front line to protect his rear, a dilemma no conventional British unit could have imposed with the same economy of force. The mathematics were stark. A single armed jeep cost a fraction of what a single Luftwaffe fighter cost to build, train a pilot for, and maintain. Yet one jeep crew in one night could remove multiple fighters from the war permanently. The exchange rate between British investment and German loss was so lopsided that the armed jeep arguably delivered a higher return per pound spent than any other weapon system in the North African theatre. That's overloaded, spring-crushed. Stripped-down Willis jeep, the one that looked like it might collapse under the weight of its own weaponry, turned out to be one of the most cost-effective weapons platforms of the entire war. Germany spent millions building the aircraft that lined those desert airstrips. Britain spent almost nothing destroying them. That's not luck. That's operational innovation, turning borrowed equipment into a weapon system no other nation conceived of, let alone matched.